Joining me now, someone who's in the room for that briefing, Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley. Congressman, thanks for taking the time this morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
So first, and I understand this was classified, so I'm not going to ask you to verge into classified territory, but in general terms, does the U.S. now believe that this surveillance balloon was more advanced and more of a threat than initially thought?
Well, look, I again can't talk about what was discussed. Here's what I think I would take from it. I think the United States did exactly the right thing under these circumstances, and would probably understand a little bit more. I think that in the final analysis, we can and will learn from this. And in the final situation, I think our country will be safer as a result.
Do you believe, or are you concerned at all, that by waiting to shoot it down until after it left its position over the U.S. continent, that increased the danger at all? Or are you confident the U.S. was able to mitigate that threat while it remained over U.S. territory?
You know, the Pentagon was telling us that they were able to mitigate in real time as this was taking place, and I believe that that's accurate. I think the preeminent concern they had, as they expressed real time, was the safety of U.S. citizens with something this large. They described it publicly as something 3 times larger than a bus. Anywhere that falls with such a huge debris pile creates risk. And again, what we said previous as this was happening was the fact that it was shot down over water gives you perhaps a greater opportunity to collect and maintain an intact system. And again, we want to learn from what they were using.
There's been a lot of hard questions about whether this was deliberate on the part of the Chinese president to send this surveillance balloon on the eve of a summit with the U.S. Secretary of State, a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of State that has now been scuttled. Do you believe it was deliberate?
What surprised me when this happened is that, and as you and I talked real time, this made no sense. Most collection is covert. It's, cloak and dagger, trying to keep things quiet. This was the equivalent of an intelligence collecting device as a brass band driving down Main Street. There's no way you're going to hide this. And it comes at a time when they were certainly trying to normalize relations. Yeah. The 2 presidents had met. Secretary Blinken was about to meet with his counterpart. So I raised the question then that it didn't make sense, and perhaps this was, someone in some events forcing the Chinese president's hand on this. But it doesn't make any sense. I'm concerned of what it means long term and divisions within that government, but it's certainly something to be investigated.
The U.S., as you know, flies surveillance aircraft, both crewed and uncrewed, around, not over, Chinese airspace, as the U.S. has made clear. But China has also said that it reserves the right to act in a similar way. And by the way, there are parts of that part of the world, including over the South China Sea, where China claims airspace that the U.S. does not recognize. Are you concerned about a threat to U.S. surveillance aircraft from China now?
I am, and particularly because the Chinese government has been very aggressive. As you know, they're building islands to exert what areas that they claim that they have control over. There have been very aggressive tactics by the Chinese military toward U.S. military, and we have to be aware of that. So, look, this is an escalation at the worst possible time. Tensions were already high over issues like Taiwan to TikTok to so many other things, and we are well aware of the extraordinary aggression that China has taken. In Chicago, someone was sentenced in January to spying for the Chinese government, going after our technology. So clearly, this isn't a wake-up call. We're well aware of it. Yeah. To me, it is some odd situation that highlights these issues, but it's still inexplicable for its timing and its manner.
Final question before we go. After this briefing, are you more concerned about the threat from this surveillance balloon and others than you were prior?
In some respects, I'm equally concerned, but I'm more confident that we can address these issues. I think in the final analysis, we have learned a great deal about this and how to mitigate against this. and what kind of capabilities that do exist. So, look, very concerned about Chinese hard surveillance and spying on our country. That's an ongoing threat. This particular incident, while deeply troubling and a violation of our sovereignty that need to be treated as such, it may be in the end a gain for us in understanding how they operate.
Congressman Mike Quigley, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Thank you.